But when you're not transparent about it, it feels like you have something to hide. And if you would have just put this out into the sunlight, then all of this wouldn't have been an issue at all. And that's probably one of the most frustrating things is these, and we're not trying to invoke that. We're not trying to create that situation. We're just trying to do our job to make sure that people have that, clear, correct, verified information and make sure that, there isn't anything that needs to be told.
I can't count how many times I've had to have that conversation through our lawsuit with the commissioners, through the issues we've had with our police department in Newcastle multiple times. I've had that conversation, like, we can stop this while it's a snowball before it becomes a snowman.
You a wonderful job for us. And great, I think it was great, but great course too. You can come back over here if you want, Greg, it's a little awkward. Thank you all for making this trip. It's so nice to be up here in Northeast Wyoming, isn't it? We haven't been here for a long time. And now a lot of us know what it feels like for them to have to travel and see us in other parts of the state all the time. But it was definitely worth the trip. It's always wonderful to be in a room full of Wyoming Democrats. Not an honor we get a whole lot, but when we do, we take advantage of it, don't we? Yes. I think you guys did some good work today. I hope you feel that way too. I think we accomplished some great things, and there are good things to come down the road, not so far even. We're going to be in Casper next June. I hope you all put that on your calendar. June 1st in Casper, Wyoming, for the 2024 State Convention. Natrona County, I know, is excited to be hosting. Isn't that right, Chris?
That's right.
And we have a lot of work between now and then to get our county conventions and caucuses put together as well. So we'll be in contact a lot, and there's a lot to do, but I know that you are all up to that. And I was thinking, you've heard from me a lot today and haven't seen me a lot, so I'll try my best to be brief. But the last time I was here in Newcastle for a political event anyhow was in 2016. And we met a couple. He was a coal miner, she was a teacher, and they had a daughter who was suffering from a very rare disease, one that required pretty constant treatment actually. And they'd have to travel from Newcastle to other places to get that done, but the job here working in the coal mine was good and helped accommodate that. And this job working in Wyoming schools was good and helped accommodate that. But I'll tell you that everyone in that family had a reason to be afraid for their future. That's what they told us. They said, she told us, I don't know what's going to happen with education funding in Wyoming. It's always on the chopping block. There's somebody always spending public education in Wyoming. I don't know if next year I'll have a job. The coal miner said the same thing. I can see that things are changing in this country and in this world, and I know that coal's not going to last forever. And if we want to stay in Wyoming, I'm not sure what other opportunities exist for me here. And the little girl, of course, the kind of care and medical support she needed wasn't available in Wyoming. And they told us there's really nobody speaking for our situation. We don't feel like there's anybody out there who cares about our situation or can be our voice except for Democrats. And they were registered Democrats at the time, but they recognized that it was Democrats in this state who were talking about the issues and people that matter to them. But we have to be louder. We have to do a better job, and all of us know that, because there are those people, there are those issues out there that if it weren't for Democrats wouldn't have any voice at all. So that's a pretty big responsibility on our part. We might be the minority party, but we can still drive the conversation, so we can still make sure that we're talking about the right things to the right people and the right issues. And I think too often, I know you hear this, I've heard it, it's been in articles, folks saying, well, if the Wyoming Democrats weren't so extreme, if they just weren't so extreme, we could, come toward the middle a little bit, we could elect more, and we could have more balance in this state. And I would defy anybody to find something on our platform or something that's being accomplished or proposed by our legislators or any other elected Democrat official in this state that could be considered extreme. I don't think saying that we need to fully fund public education is extreme. I think saying that we want to ban books because they don't agree with our worldview is extreme, right? I don't think it's extreme to say that a person should expect that they're going to arrive at work and come home from work safe without incident. I do think it's kind of extreme to say that profits matter more than safety or workers' rights. Yep. I don't think it's extreme to say that we need to conserve wild places for future generations. I think it's kind of extreme to say that that shouldn't be our priority when it comes to land management. I don't think it should be considered extreme to say that every person should have access to the medical care and preventative care that they need. But it's extreme to say that that should be a privilege for those who can afford it. And that's the situation we find ourselves in right now. Wyoming is a place of extremes. We have extreme landscapes, we have extreme weather, we all know, and we have extreme distances to travel in order to get to some of these meetings. But what we don't have is extreme Democrats. We have passionate Democrats, we have thoughtful Democrats, and we have dedicated Democrats who want to make a difference, a good difference, in our state. And that's why we've adopted this new slogan, Here for Good. It's our state. We want to do good things. We want it to be a better place for everyone who wants to live, work, and raise a family here. We want to have opportunities for young people. We want to have good health care. We want to have good stewardship of public lands and conservation. We want to have good education. We want to make sure this is a place where we have good ideas, good policies, and good solutions. And so we're going to work hard. We're not going anywhere, and we're going to do good work, right? Yes. And although he is not a Wyoming Democrat, our guest speaker tonight could be, because he fits those same characteristics. He's been working to do good things for not just people in his home state of Minnesota, but people across this nation for many years. And I can tell you that when I first started in this role, there was a question in my mind is what kind of place would Wyoming have in the national party? We're the least populated state. We don't have a lot of registered Democrats, and we elected Donald Trump got his highest percentage of votes here in Wyoming, more than any other state. And so that makes you wonder, what kind of response will I get from the national party when I go to that first meeting? And I can tell you, it was a greeting with warm regards and open arms and great advice, wonderful mentorship, and a real desire to make sure that the Wyoming Democratic Party, just like any other Democratic Party across this nation, had the resources, information, and help they needed to be successful. And from day one, he's made sure that was the case. And I'm so happy that this evening we get to have him with us here in Wyoming. He's been a wonderful friend, an inspiration to me, and a wonderful mentor. Please join me in welcoming from Minnesota, Ken Martin.
All right, are you guys fired up? All right. Well, I want to thank Joe, especially for all of his time as chair. You know, you are lucky. You have both, between Joe and Aaron, two people who do great work for this party in this state every day, but they're doing wonderful work nationally. Joe is one of the longest serving Democratic State Party chairs in our national party. He also serves as a member of the Budget and Finance Committee, helping to make sure that the resources we're raising across the country are being used in critical places throughout this nation. I thank Joe for his service. And I also want to thank Erin O'Doherty for being a fantastic vice chair. And she also serves in leadership roles on our National Voter File Cooperative, which may not surprise all of you here because you know that she's a real data whiz. And I remember one of the first meetings when we were having conversations around data, and I think Erin was fairly new to our association. But this is true of both Joe and Erin, right? They weren't afraid to stand up. They weren't afraid to ask tough questions. They weren't afraid to ask for help. And most importantly, they were making sure that they were delivering on the promises they made to each of you to make sure that Wyoming Democrats were not forgotten. So thank you to Joe and to Aaron for all of your leadership. I Before I thank Rachel, I want to thank my good friend Sarah Hunt, who also played a huge role when she was your executive director. She also was a leader in our Executive Directors Association as one of the deputy or vice presidents of the Executive Directors Association. And Sarah is a wonderful friend. We still work together, and I'm really grateful that she continues to be in these spaces helping Democrats all around the country. So thank you, Sarah, and thanks for your hospitality. And I'm really excited. Where did Rachel go? Right back there. I'm really excited to work with your new executive director, Rachel Leger. Right? Did I get that right? Yes. All right. There we go. That was all thanks to Sarah. So thank you very much. I also want to acknowledge Representative Ken Cheswick is here. Where's Ken at? Okay, Ken, thank you for being here from House District 13. Now, both Representative Cheswick and I have had very long and stressful summers now, thanks to this Barbie movie that came out. Yes, I share a little bit of accessories. Yes. Well, thank you for being here tonight. I want to thank each of you for being here, though, tonight. Thank you for all that you've done and all that you will do in the coming months to help build our party here in Wyoming. Thank you for not giving up, for standing up, and for fighting back. Pundits, media, and pollsters, they all counted out the Democratic Party in 2022. But thanks to your hard work, we defied all the odds and we won across the country. I want you to think about this. In 2022, nationally, Democrats expanded our majority in the U.S. Senate. In fact, it was the first time since 1934 that the president's party didn't lose a single incumbent senator. Because of you, we increased the number of Democratic governors and had the best midterms for governor's races for the president's party since 1986. Because of you, we had the first midterm where the party in the White House did not lose a single state legislative chamber since 1934. Not one single chamber was lost. Now, we flipped legislatures in Michigan and in my home state of Minnesota, creating trifectas which are delivering amazing progressive public policy, which I'll talk about in a moment. And because of you, and because of Democrats throughout this nation, every single election denier running for Secretary of State last year was defeated at the ballot box. That's because of you. Now look. Well, maybe not. 422 days until this 2024 election. Yes, I'm counting. Hopefully you're counting. Right? Because we have three commodities in elections, folks, if you know this. It's people, it's money, and it's time. We can always recruit a few more people, always raise a few more bucks, but the one thing we can't get back is time. Each day that goes by is one less day we have to organize, one less day we have to get out there and spread the good word and make sure people know what we're doing to improve people's lives. So you'll hear me talk about this tonight, but my ask of all of you is to not waste any day. You don't have to do something grand every single day, but have a conversation with at least one person. Have a conversation with at least one person. You don't need to go out and knock 100 doors or call 100 people. But if you spend each day doing something to lift up the Democratic Party, we'll be prepared to win here in Wyoming and throughout this country. Now look, I want to talk about the Democratic Party for a little bit. We're a Big Ten party, right? I had this young activist say to me recently, when is the Democratic Party going to realize it's okay to lose an election to prove a point? Now the answer, of course, is never, right? We can't afford to lose elections. And let's think back not too far ago, in 2016, when you see people decided to let perfect be the enemy of good. And they decided because they didn't like Hillary Clinton, they were going to sit out an election or vote for a third-party candidate. And what ended up happening is Donald Trump was elected president. Now, you see, you don't have to like our candidates, because I don't know any candidate in my 33 years of politics that I've ever agreed with 100% of the time. You see, our candidates, our names are on the ballot for sure, but what every election is about is our values. Our values are what's on the ballot. And we cannot make the same mistake we made in 2016 by letting perfect be the enemy of good. This is an existential election. This is a moment where we have to unite and we have to win. Now in Minnesota, everyone makes fun of me because of this. I always say every election is the most important election of our lifetime. And I mean it. It truly is. Because every election matters and every election has consequences. You see, in 2016, when people decided to sit that election out, I said, you know what, it's not about Hillary Clinton. Let me tell you what's going to happen with the next president of the United States. They're going to appoint new justices to the Supreme Court. What this is about, it's about equality. It's about human rights. It's about women's reproductive rights. It's about things that we've been fighting for years. At the end of the day, that's what's on the ballot. These are the consequences of elections. You know, we're a big tent. We are a big tent. And I won't change that about our party. You see, the reality is, unlike the Republicans, which is a shrinking tent that drum people out for not marching lockstep, who don't welcome any racial or ethnic diversity, certainly, but also any ideological diversity, we are Democrats. There are conservative Democrats. There are centrist Democrats. There are progressive Democrats like me. And yes, there are even leftist Democrats. And guess what? They're all welcome in this great big tent of ours. That's who we are as Democrats. But you see, I'm a yellow dog Democrat. And let me say, some of you know what a yellow dog Democrat is. You know, Ann Richards said this in her debate against George Bush. As you remember, she lost that race to him. But she said in a debate, she goes, you know what, George? I'm a yellow dog Democrat. If there was a yellow dog on the ballot with a D next to its name, I would vote for that yellow dog any day before I vote for you. And that's how I am. You see, because I know, even if there's a Democrat that I don't agree with 100% of the time, I damn well know that I agree with that Democrat more than I do most Republicans. We have to remind folks of that. Now let me be clear though. Nothing good that's ever happened in this party has ever happened without people organizing and pushing us to be better. Never. I want you to think about this because this year, 75 years ago, on July 14th, 1948 in Philadelphia at the National Convention, a young mayor of Minneapolis, Minnesota, my home state, got up on the floor of the convention. His name was Hubert Humphrey. Before he got on that floor of the convention, he brought a plank to our party platform committee of the Democratic National Party to usher in a civil rights plank. Surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly, the Democratic Party Platform Committee voted that down. Humphrey, undeterred, because he's a Minnesotan, he went out and he organized on the floor of that convention. He built support for a civil rights plank. He got up on that podium and he got it passed and he said, you know what, it's time for the Democratic Party to march forthrightly, or to come out of the shadows of states' rights and march forthrightly into the bright sunshine of human rights. At that moment, he changed our party forever. Those Dixiecrats left and we became the party of civil rights. In the 1970s, women and feminists rose up and said it's time for our party to recognize equal rights and gender equality and reproductive rights, and we ushered in platform planks to do that. And in 2012, I was proud to be in Charlotte as one of the authors of the marriage equality plank that ushered in marriage equality into our party platform. You see, we are a party that welcomes dissent and debate. We are a party that wants to have that conversation, and we want to move forward on critical issues. Our job as party leaders, and all of you in this room, is to make sure that everyone's in the same boat, rowing in the same direction towards the same goal. It doesn't work when we have one oar going this way and the other going the other way. We need to remind folks where we're going, what we stand for, and there's space in the boat for everyone. Let me talk a little bit now about what's happening in this country, because it's truly a tale of two countries. One country I don't recognize, and one maybe you don't either. I was in Tallahassee, Florida a few months ago, visiting with House Democrats down there in the Capitol. Last year, of course, was a devastating election for Democrats in that state. Wiped them out. And when I was there, the day I was there, they were debating on the floor of the House a 6-week abortion ban. I want to tell you that again, these are the consequences of elections. Because what we're seeing in Florida, 6-week abortion ban, permitless carry, prohibiting diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings, whitewashing history by banning books and changing curriculum, attacks on the LGBTQ community. You can go down the list of what's happening in Florida right now. That is anathema to who we are as Americans. In Nashville, Tennessee, just a couple months ago, they expelled 2 Democratic lawmakers, duly elected lawmakers. They expelled them from their seats for having the temerity to stand up and join a peaceful protest against gun violence. In Ohio, I was just there a couple weeks ago campaigning against an amendment that the Republicans put on the ballot, attacking one of the core tenets of our American democracy, the concept of majority rule and one person, one vote. They knew they were on the wrong side of the abortion issue, and they tried to change the rules to make it harder to amend their Constitution. You see, Republicans are trying to push people out of the conversation. We're trying to bring people in. They're trying to make it harder for people to live their lives. We're trying to make it easier for people to live their lives. They're trying to build exclusive spaces. We're trying to build inclusive communities. So let me give you a little bit of hope. Let me tell you what happened in Minnesota. We won our Senate majority back last year. 1 vote majority. Several seat majority in the House. Trifecta for the first time in 10 years. You would think that people would be a little cautious. Maybe we should be a little cautious and conservative and just play it safe. That's not what we did. I want to tell you, we passed arguably the most progressive agenda in the nation with a 1-seat majority. We passed paid family medical leave law, the largest in the nation. We passed the largest child tax credit in the nation, cutting childhood poverty in half. Free college for low-income families, free school meals for all children, $3 billion worth of tax cuts for working families, the largest investment ever in our schools, $4 billion over the next 4 years, $1 billion investment in affordable housing. We codified abortion rights. We went carbon-free energy by 2040. We restored the votes to thousands of felons. We gave driver's license to all, including immigrants in our state. We legalized gender-affirming care, making us a trans refuge state. We banned conversion therapy. We legalized recreational use cannabis, and we created automatic voter registration. This is just a short list. And I say that because, not to pat myself on the back, not to pat myself on the back. I'm proud of what we did. But the reality is, every election matters. Every election has consequences. You see, not just the bad stuff we see around the country, the good consequences when you elect people who care, elect people who are going to use power to make a difference. That's what happens. You can truly make generational impacts through good public policy. I believe that. 33 years ago, I started with a bushy-haired college professor named Paul Wellstone, who ran for the U.S. Senate, whose famous slogan was, "We all do better when we all do better," but he instilled in me and many people who work for him this belief that government could be and should be a catalyst for change if you just elect good people who will use that power to make a difference. You see, power is fleeting. We don't know when we'll have it again. We might as well use it when we have it to make a difference. And if we lose, we still win, because we made the difference in people's lives. And I will tell you, the recipe for it in states like Wyoming is to give people hope, and then when they vote for you, stand up and deliver and push hard. Don't see things through just your own self-interested lens of getting reelected. Remember why people sent you there. Now, Rome wasn't built in a day. It takes time and energy and a plan to move a state from a red state to a blue state. But it's possible. Joe and I had a conversation about this earlier today. I'm proud of what Joe's doing here, and Aaron, and Rachel, and the rest of your team. When I was listening to your organizing director talk about we're here for good, I love that. Because not only are Democrats here for good, you're here to do good. You're here for the good. As John Lewis said, you have to get in good trouble, right? That's what we're here for. We're here to get in good trouble because people are relying on us to change this state, to deliver our promises and improve people's lives and strengthen communities. Now, we've seen a huge erosion of support in rural communities, for sure, over the last 3 decades, including in my state of Minnesota. I want to talk about my father-in-law, David O'Rourke. He's a farmer in southern Minnesota, 800 acres of corn and beans and 400 head of beef cattle. His family's farmed that land for 135 years. Salt to the earth. Not a racist bone in his body, one of the best men I've ever met in my life. 2008 and 12, he voted for Obama. 2016 and 20, he voted for Trump. I'm sure many of you have family members like that who voted for Trump, right? When I started talking to Dave about why he voted for Trump, it started to become painfully aware of, to me, the challenges we have as a Democratic Party. You see, Dave's 88 years old. He's on the tail end of his life. He shouldn't have a care in the world about the future. He should be spending time with my boys, his grandsons, and his other grandchildren, not worried about the future. His high school that he used to go see football games on Friday night that my wife went to, that his father went to, closed down. It's no longer there. The theater that he used to go to on Main Street, closed down. It's no longer there. The clinic he takes his wife, took his wife to, closed down. So he's got to drive further to get the medical care she needs. The parish we belong to, the Catholic Church, now has to share Mass with other churches in the area. This is a refrain many of you know, because it's happening in rural communities throughout this country. You see, instead of living carefree, he's got a knot of anxiety in his stomach about his future. He's seen the town he grew up in, that he raised his family in, dying before his eyes. Along comes a snake oil salesman named Donald Trump, saying, "Let's make America great again." And of course, we all know what Trump meant. But the reality is, to someone just holding on to a little bit of identity, someone who wants things to be like they were when he was growing up, he voted for him. And you guys hear these stories all the time, right? I will tell you, this is not an argument about stats and facts and figures and all these pieces. At the end of the day, this is about people in this country feeling forgotten and left behind. People like Dave O'Rourke who feel like Democrats don't care about what's happening in their communities. That we'd rather organize the big cities and the suburbs. We'd rather talk about other communities, but not their community. You know, when Paul said we all do better and we all do better, he didn't just mean a few people. He meant all. All. When he could organize corn farmers in southern Minnesota, he could go up to the Iron Range and organize those miners. He could come into the inner city and talk to the immigrant community. And he understood, despite how disparate those groups were, how different they were, there was something that united all of them. A humanity that united all of them. This idea, the American dream, that if you work hard and play by the rules, you can build a better life for your family. You can maybe leave something more for your kids and your grandchildren. Now we know that that dream's not afforded equally to all. But the reality is that all people in this country, no matter where they're from, who they love, where they live, they share that aspirational goal to be able to retire with dignity, to send their kids to school, to have a living wage job, to be able to have access to affordable health care, to just live their lives. You see, we sometimes get embroiled in all of these issues of controversy, and they're not controversial, they're important issues. But we forget at the core of it, people are just living their lives every day, going to work, just trying to keep their head above water, to build a better life for their families. That's what Paul understood. And as simplistic and maybe overly simplistic as it may sound, that's what we have to do again. You see, if we stop organizing in red states, or red counties, or red cities or towns, we've given up on those people. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're never going to turn a red area to a purple area to a blue area unless you're there. Half the battle is being present. Half the battle is showing them that you care and that you're going to be there to fight for them. The other half of the battle is making sure that you're bringing forward policies and standing up for their community so they know you're willing to fight for them. Now look, we have a tendency to be the Eeyore party as Democrats, right? The world is me, the half glass empty, the sky is falling, this Democrat's too old, this Democrat's too young, this Democrat's too conservative, this Democrat's too progressive. We need to stop agonizing. Stop wringing our hands, Democrats. Stiffen our spine, raise our head, be proud to be Democrats. We have an amazing story to tell. An amazing story to tell. And I would just encourage all of you, let's stop agonizing and start evangelizing. I need each of you in this room to be an evangelist. Be an evangelist for what we are doing to improve people's lives. You know, there has been no president and vice president in the history of this nation that has delivered more for the American people in their first 3 years in office than Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I mean, think about this. The American Rescue Plan, where we put shots in arms and checks in banks, we cut childhood poverty in half, and we allowed our nation to rebound after the pandemic. The bipartisan infrastructure bill, which is the nation's largest infrastructure bill since Dwight Eisenhower, and it's delivering real, tangible results right here in Wyoming and throughout this nation. From broadband to roads and bridges to investments in critical infrastructure projects that haven't been seen since Dwight Eisenhower. You know, how many weeks under Donald Trump did they talk about this being infrastructure week and they didn't deliver one single bill? We delivered the nation's largest bill, and we're making investments here that are going to matter. And let me tell you a story why it matters. I mentioned my father-in-law, Dave O'Rourke. He has this state highway right out in front of his farm. It's been in disrepair for years. And as a result of it being in disrepair, he had to hire smaller trucks to come in and take away his crops because he couldn't bring the big semi-trailers in. It cost him more money, and it was always a big thorn in his side. Well, guess what? You see, sometimes as Democrats, we like to talk about things like the infrastructure bill, $1.9 trillion infrastructure bill. That number is so abstract. How many of us in here can even, $1.9 trillion? It's so abstract. What does that mean to me? Well, guess what? Now I can tell Dave, you see that state highway out there that you've been worried about for years? It's repaired thanks to Democrats. Democrats delivered. And we have to do that in every part of this state. You can't just talk about these things in an abstract. When you come here to Weston County, make sure you're on with information about what the Biden-Harris administration and Bidenomics have done to improve people's lives here. Personalize it, localize it, make sure they know that we're the ones that are responsible for delivering on that. The CHIPS Act, which is going to allow us to compete with China by bringing manufacturing jobs back to this country. The Inflation Reduction Act, which is the largest investment in tackling climate in this nation's history, puts us right back as being a world leader in this existential threat, which is climate, and we see it every single day. And I don't know about you, but it is scary, what we've been seeing in recent months. Now look, we have more people working at any point in our nation's history. We have record low unemployment. We have strong wage growth, actually real wage growth, the first time we've seen in 30 years. And we have low inflation. You know, Republicans are going to get out there and Trump and talk about how bad this economy is. We have the best economy in the world. Right now in the world. There is none of the G7 countries that have lower unemployment, higher wage growth, and low inflation like the U.S. So when you hear that hogwash from Trump and the Republicans, you remind them, and you remind folks out here that this is one of the best economic periods we've ever seen in our country, and that's thanks to Bidenomics, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Now, look. We've seen historic student debt relief. We've decriminalized marijuana offenses. We've capped insulin at $35. We've allowed the federal government to negotiate drug prices so seniors don't have to be priced out by their prescription drugs. So I ask all of you, why are we agonizing? I mean, truly, I go places that people say, Democrats, what are we going to do? You know, I just got to tell you, we got to just tell the story and be proud of it. Because, you know what? There were years where I had to sell a product and I had to pull a lot of stuff out of the air. This is easy. We got so much to talk about. So many good things we've done. And I need your help in doing that. So, in addition to being an evangelist, I needed to stop agonizing and start organizing. You see, at the heart of it, and Madison, my colleague, knows this, my most important title, it's not DNC Vice Chair or President of the ASDC or Chair of the DFL. My most important title, other than being dad and husband, is organizer. That's how I got my start. That's what I'm still doing. That's why I'm here today. We have to stop agonizing and start organizing. And what do I mean by that? We win elections the way my friend and mentor Paul Wellstone taught us. We go door to door, neighbor to neighbor, person to person, having conversations with folks about their aspirations, their hopes, their dreams for their communities. That's how we do it. We're present in communities. We don't give up on voters. I don't care if this is the reddest state, to your point, if this is the reddest state in the nation. There's still Democrats in here that need to be organized. There's still Democrats that need some hope. There's still Democrats that need to see people like me and others in this state so that they know that it's okay to fight. It's okay to lift your head up and be proud to be a Democrat. And we also have to have tough conversations with those closest to us. You see, I see candidates and party leaders do this all the time. It's easier to go and talk to someone you don't know, have a tough conversation. Because, see, if it goes bad, you can just leave. It's much tougher to have conversations with your own family member because guess what? You have to have Thanksgiving dinner with them. Right? I get it. I told you about my father-in-law. My brother is a union carpenter. He's a Trump voter. And I'll tell you, he thinks that Democrats are going to take away his guns. There's nothing to it. I'm a hunter. I hunt with him almost every fall. And I will tell you, that's just not true. But it's hard to convince people who already have this in their head that that's what we're trying to do. The reality is those are the people you have to have the tough conversations with. Because at the end of the day, they love you. I love my brother, I love my father-in-law, and those are the conversations. Even as tough as they are, because we still have to break bread together, we have to start at home first. Have those tough conversations. And lastly, I would say we've just got to be the champion for those who are feeling forgotten. You know, this isn't about left or right. It truly isn't. I'm proud to be a Democrat. I'm really proud to be an American. And what we know in this country is that this is about the haves and the have-nots. That's the real divide in this country. And unfortunately, there's many people voting Republican who are in the same boat as we are. The have-nots. Just trying to get ahead and build a better life for their families. And when we start to realize that, then maybe we start to realize that it's okay to have conversations with people if we truly listen. We get beyond some of these controversial issues, you'll find that they have, many of them, have a lot of the same dreams and aspirations and goals that we all do here. Now don't get me wrong, there are some that don't. And if there's any silver lining of the 2016 election, when Donald Trump was elected, it showed the nasty underbelly of this country. That racism is alive and well. That misogyny is alive and well. That we have a lot of work in this country to do to heal this country and bring people together. I have no interest in trying to find common ground with some of those people who are trying to tear this country apart. But there are core values that have united Democrats and Republicans for years, and we need to keep fighting for those. You know, almost done. I forgot to say this earlier, but it's worth saying. When I go around to groups like this, I often say I'm not here to win elections. And people say, what in the heck are you talking about? You're vice chair of the DNC? Isn't your job to win elections? Sure. Yes, it is. And I will be judged on that, as many of you in this room will. But that's not my goal. Not to win an election, pat ourselves on the back and say, oh, look at us, we won an election. What good is that? You see, what all of you are here to do is the same thing I'm here. To get people elected who share our values to office so that they can pass good public policy that's going to make a difference in people's lives, that's going to improve and strengthen our communities, give people some hope, and have generational change and impacts that are going to be felt for decades to come. You see, winning is just the beginning. Winning is just the beginning. Winning allows us to build a power around the issues we care about. You know, Paul used to say that too, that elections are not about big money. It's not about what happens in the halls of power in state legislatures or Washington. Politics is squarely about the improvement of people's lives. That's why you're here. That's why you all drove from all parts of Wyoming to be here today and give so much of your time, your talent, and treasure to this party. You're not here just to win. You're here to make a difference in people's lives. And we just must remember what Paul used to always say, that we all do better when we all do better. Let's keep fighting for everyone. Let's keep fighting for an inclusive country that recognizes the dignity and worth of every person. Let's keep fighting for a country that affords opportunity to every person who works hard and believes in the beauty of their dreams. Let's keep fighting for a democracy that ensures that more voices are participating in, that all voices are represented. Let's keep fighting for a woman's right to choose, for our environment and our planet, for immigration reform, for sensible gun reform, for public schools, for the right to organize and bargain collectively, for criminal justice reform, for fair taxation, for black and brown communities, for trans youth, for the LGBTQ communities, for peace, and lastly, for a world that recognizes, despite our differences, we are all united by a thread of humanity. Thank you so much, Wyoming Democrats. Keep fighting, keep the faith. Thanks for having me.
So, I would entertain a motion to make Ken Martin an honorary Wyoming Democrat. All those in favor? Okay, that means, so that passes. I'm not going to have to count that. And that means you have to come back.
I'm coming back.
We'd love to have you back in Wyoming. And you know, state parties don't have a better friend in the national party than Ken Martin. I know he's not going to forget about us because he never had before. But to help you remember Wyoming and then from between now and the next time you come, we do have something we wanted to give you.
That's all right. Is that
Because it looks good. You make a wonderful. There, you got cowboy boots, so you're almost there. So, you know, when you're crossing the plains of Minnesota and the lakes of Minnesota, put that on and remember the Wyoming Democrats and how much we love you and that we can't wait to have you back. Thank you, everyone.
In addition to the weekly printed version of the newsletter journal, we also promote our community and share important information on our award-winning website, newslj.com, and in our weekly email newsletter, Nuke Now. We also connect with readers through various social media platforms and invite you to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can even take a look at a recent meeting of the City Council, School Board, or County Commission on our YouTube channel. We do hope that you will go to newslj.com and subscribe today, and we look forward to making all of our great content available to you. But regardless of your level of support, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for doing your part to preserve a free and independent local press.